All right, everybody, welcome to our very first episode of the Growth Marketers Podcast. I'm Solomon Timothy.
And I'm Taylor Rowe.
We are very excited to connect with growth marketers all across the world, and I've been in this space for over a decade. First as an agency, and we built our own platform, and I promise you'll learn a lot about me in this podcast. Taylor, tell everyone about this podcast and who it's for and what we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you mentioned, we are a full-service digital marketing agency. So over the last 13, 14 years, we've had a lot of different conversations with marketers and entrepreneurs and CEOs. And so we wanted to make this podcast to dive deeper into a lot of these different subjects and topics that we're talking about every day anyway. And we wanted to bring guests on and interview them and kind of learn what different tricks and techniques people are using in other industries. So it's really just a place for growth marketers to come together. We consider ourselves as marketers and experts in the field. So we want to share some of that knowledge, but really we want to learn. So I think this is sort of an exercise that we've created so that we can sit down on a weekly basis and come up with some great content and great ideas. What we're going to do sort of initially is look at the current state of marketing, go over a high-level overview of what digital marketing is today, what's going on, and then over the next few weeks and months, we're going to dive deeper into each of these different aspects of marketing in each of these different channels in individual episodes.
Absolutely. I mean, if you think about it, our world is changing so fast. There's been more change in the last 12 months than there have been in the last 12 years, right? So as new mediums, new tools, new platforms come about, there's so much change. And I absolutely think that this is going to be an overview episode, and then we're going to dig deeper into it. Taylor, you work with businesses every day, and you're helping them solve problems, marketing problems. How can marketers and business owners who are feeling overwhelmed get a grasp over this ever-evolving landscape?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you make a great point that, in the recent 12 months or so, marketing has changed, or in the last 5 years,
Agreed.
It's really transformed. So, but ultimately, I think the same tactics or the same sort of marketing ideals have held true from the beginning. There's really three main things that marketing is supposed to do. And the way that I always look at it is, we're either capturing demand that's out there, meaning we have an existing product or service in the market and people know about it, they're aware of it, and they're searching for it, right? You sell shoes, people are looking for, shoes. You might even sell Nike shoes. They're looking for the exact type of shoe. They already know the name of it, the model, whatever you want to call it, and they're searching for it. So we're just out there capturing demand and letting people know that, hey, you're looking for this item or service, we can offer it, we can provide it to you, and here's why we have the value. The other thing that you can do is create demand, right? So people don't know about you, or people don't know about your service, your product
Right.
you're offering, and you need to disrupt the market and create some demand for that. And the third thing that marketing is really supposed to do, and a lot of times is missed, or people don't, it's kind of miscategorized,
Right.
I think is sort of nurturing your contacts, whether they're contacts or not, right? Traditionally, you learned in marketing class, right, that it takes 7 or 8 touches before somebody makes a purchasing
Right.
decision or makes that purchase.
Mm-hmm.
We still need to do the same thing from a digital perspective. And so whether they're a contact or not, just nurturing them, even with existing customers, and we'll talk about some of those tactics as well. I think it's marketing's job as well to be in line with the overall sales process and continue to nurture them. So I think those three main ideals, sort of capture, create, and nurture, still hold true. It's just the way that we disseminate that information today has really changed, and the vehicles have changed, the channels have changed. So that's really what we want to focus on.
Sure.
And we want to talk about a couple of those different ideas.
Right.
So,
Let's dive a little deeper
Yeah.
into capturing demand. Like for our audience, we do this every single day, so we get it. Like, how can we describe that to a person who's new,
right.
who've never kind of saw digital marketing that way? How do you describe that?
Yeah, so digitally, the most obvious one would be through Google, right?
Sure.
That's what people do. It's literally, become a verb, right? People are Googling something. So that's the easiest way, or I guess the most straightforward way that you can kind of comprehend. Within Google, there's a few different options. And again, this is changing every single day. If you've ever typed on your phone or onto the web browser, you search for something, the actual SERP or the search engine result page is
Right.
completely different. Sometimes there's videos, sometimes there's images, sometimes there's shopping ads, sometimes there's organic results, there's a local map if you're looking for a restaurant. But ultimately, there's only two different options within Google. It's either showing up organically, meaning you're optimizing whatever content and whatever format that you have to show up, or it's a pay-to-play space, right? I think Google made 90% or 85% of their
95.
their
Revenue.
revenue from ads last year. So all the other things that they're doing, they make their money from ads. So you're going to continue to see more and more ads show up there for people that are trying to capture the demand. And people wouldn't be investing there if it didn't work. So I think that's a great way to capture that demand. Obviously, there are other channels that people do search on, YouTube, Amazon. There's specific directories for different industries depending on what you're selling. There's other platforms. I mean, you have Pinterest and social platforms and
even the App Store.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a huge market. I mean, whatever you're selling or whatever you're selling, if it's a product or service, there is a platform most likely that people are searching for either what you have to offer or some sort of alternative because they don't know what you have to offer exists. And so that's kind of the next step, right, is the creating demand. So, Salim, do you want to talk a little bit about tactics, techniques that we use or other companies use to actually create demand?
Right. So, I mean, if you want to create demand, you got to get out there. So, could it be display ads? You need to be where they are. So, they may not know your brand yet. So, you could use Facebook ads anywhere based on the targeting that they have. You can do video ads. Again, we're doing a podcast. People want to, hear about your company. You build that podcast so that they can come hear about it, whatever the topics that you're covering. At the end of the day, I think a lot of marketing is done in this create demand part because, like I said, a lot of companies says, well, I'm the best at XYZ, but nobody really know about it. So how do I create that demand? Demand creation is a huge part, especially in B2B space. So you can do account-based marketing. That's another way that you create demand. You reach out to those very specific companies and say, hey, I offer XYZ problem. I offer the solution to XYZ problem. Is this something that you guys are potentially looking at?
And a lot of times it's problems that people didn't even realize they had. I think a lot of people struggle and a lot of marketers struggle when they are breaking into a new product category or service category, right? Like you mentioned, that it's a solution to a problem people didn't even know that they had.
Right.
Obvious examples are, things like Netflix or Uber or Airbnb, something along those lines where, you can't capture demand for somebody looking to, rent their house out on a part-time basis. People don't go to Google and say, how do I rent my house to strangers? Or is there any strangers in Utah that I can rent a house from? They had to disrupt the market and create a lot of awareness. And so that's where you see, like you mentioned, commercials and display ads and billboards and those sorts of things. And I think that is something, too, that a lot of marketers look at it as sort of an either or, right? You either capture demand or create demand. But how do you feel about companies that are in situations or industries where there is a lot of awareness about their solution? Do you think they should focus on only capturing demand, or what strategies can they use to actually create demand as well or create awareness?
I mean, I think, like I said, you'd never want to be in a situation where you're not continuing to create demand because the fact of the matter is there might be new platforms out there that you can try it. And if you think about social, there's so many places that you can play. And like you said, Pinterest. I mean, you don't want to not be there if that's something that your audience is looking for. At the end of the day, if you want to make business today, if you want to make money today, you got to capture the demand. That's where the transaction happens. Somebody's looking, like you said, for the Nike shoes. They click on it. You want to be there. I mean, today, if you're not on Google Shopping, if you're an e-commerce site and you don't have a paid ads running, right, with your Google Merchant solution, I wonder how you can get sales because that's where I go. I search for what it is that I'm looking for, exact model, click on the shopping.
You can just shop.
Exactly. There's millions of other stores that sell the same product, but just because they're not there, it's not even being visible by me. And I'm in the, literally purchasing mode with my credit card. I just want to find the best place to buy this. So I think you have to do both because, like I said, you're going after a different audience that are not necessarily looking for what you're doing. So that's why you're doing that sort of that creating demand part.
Mm-hmm.
But capturing is definitely how you're going to get sales. It depends on what the goal is, again, for the campaign.
Yeah. And what should the goal be? I mean, what sort of metrics should business owners or marketers use if the goal of the campaign is creating demand or branding, or if it's a brand new product, right? A lot of times companies will ask us, how do I break into the space, or how much of my budget should I spend on marketing, right? And when you don't have something as straightforward as, let's say, Google AdWords, right, where you know what the estimated cost per click is, you know what the search volume is, so you can estimate what type of cost per lead or cost per conversion you might get. How should marketers measure themselves, and what sort of goals should they create if they're breaking into a new space or they're trying to create awareness?
I think it comes down to tracking how many people are coming in sort of direct traffic or branded search, just because you built that awareness for your company, right? If you didn't do that, then they really are not going to come there. They're going to come through a referral. Somebody clicked on a link on another website, you're going to get there. But the more branded search, that you have in your Google Analytics or your paid ads or whatever, shows that they actually know the brand that they're looking for because they saw it at some kind of a banner ads or billboard or whatever it might be. That's how one way you can tell how your marketing is actually working. That's one metric. The other metric obviously is if you can get that sales. That's the other part. Actual transaction. People purchase X dollars. How many ever opportunities that are in the sales pipeline. That would be the other way to actually measure it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is forgotten a little bit in the digital age because everyone looks at the metrics and, everyone talks about, a hack, right? How do we hack marketing, right, or how do we improve our return on ad spend and those sorts of things. But you think about the biggest brands that are out there, and they are exactly that. They're brands. And so it's the awareness that they exist. Then they're selling different products and those sorts of things. So in order to increase those conversion rates, in order to increase the performance of your other campaigns where you capture the demand, I think it's always important to have some efforts, whatever that may be, even if it's going to trade shows or local events in your community, just to keep that familiarity with your
Correct.
brand, so that the conversion happens a lot easier, both on the marketing and on the sales side.
Right. It emphasizes the good old saying of 7 to 10 times having seen that brand. Absolutely. Let's talk about nurturing and engaging.
Sure.
Right. So how can one do that today?
Yeah, I mean, from a digital standpoint, one of my favorite things, to implement for our clients is remarketing or retargeting. I think that throughout that sales process, exact same thing, right? If you've already have someone that's shown interest in your product or your service, they've been to your website, they've been to your social profiles, whatever that may be, if we can stay in front of them across other platforms, so they're on social media, they're on ESPN, they're on
Right.
weather.com, and we can show them our products or services. If you're in the e-commerce space, it's really a no-brainer. If someone's looking at your shirt, your hat, your shoes, your bags, whatever you're selling, and you continue to stay in front of them, it's going to drastically increase your conversion rates, because the reality is, especially in e-commerce, I mean, if it's the first time they've heard of your brand, it's very likely that 99% of those people are going to leave your website
Right.
After the first visit. So what are we doing with those 99% of people that are not buying from us if we're not staying in front of them in all sorts of
Capturing their
different
email
ways?
address.
Exactly. It's not going to work as well, right? And you bring up a great point about email. I think marketing automation has pretty much been a thing since email became a thing, but it's getting more and more and more sophisticated, and it we've seen it across multiple platforms with text message. Even in the B2B space, you can assign tasks and those sorts of things to sales reps so they can prioritize based on user behavior. So I think if you can segment your audience, whether they're customers or prospects, and you can segment them based on what they're looking at on your website or what industry they're in, whatever that may be, the further you can segment them, the more personalized those messages and those touch points can be. And the more data you can collect on the result of that, the better that you can continue to improve those campaigns. So those are some of the favorite things that we like to implement here in terms of nurturing those clients, but I guess prospects. But along the same lines, I think it is important to nurture your existing client base, right? So what sort of things have you seen out there, whether those are companies targeting you or that you've run with our campaigns here, that have been beneficial to actually nurture the customer base? And why should anybody even care about nurturing their customer base?
Absolutely. And I think that's one part. Whenever I go and speak and so on, I talk about telling the customer that you have is just as important as getting somebody else who doesn't know about your brand, because loyalty is really, really, really hard to attain. And there are companies that are contacting your customers, telling them about it. They're pitching to them. They're seeing the banner ads that we're talking about because people are trying to create demand and capture demand. So you got to tell them when you have a new feature, when you have a new service, when you have something that's changed, how you're going to improve their life, how are you going to make their life easier. You have to continue to do that, whether it's through email, whether it's through a video specifically created for the customers, how you're going to make their life easier. Maybe you went from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. customer service to 24 hours a day. Maybe you're adding live chat as a means to engage with your customers. Any one of those things is going to help them stay with you longer. And that's really what it comes down to. And I think a lot of folks, they spend a lot of energy attracting customers, getting them, closing them, and then they do nothing about engaging with their existing customer base. And again, you don't want to build a business with that's all you're doing is getting new customers and then you lose them. Right. You're going to have to make sure that they stay loyal with you. And that means that there needs to be a whole campaign built around retaining the customer base.
Yeah, I think that's extremely important. And no matter if you're in B2B, B2C, you're selling a product or a service, I think that people forget about that piece. Like you said, so much emphasis on marketing and sales is on acquiring new customers.
ROI.
But there's so much data for one. Even if the only plan was to reach out to every single customer and learn what they like about your product or service or not, that's so invaluable in terms of the information that you can get out of that. At the same time, you probably most likely have more than one product or service that you're selling, right? So how do we cross-sell? How do we upsell? I hear so many times with our clients in B2B space, if you think about like a manufacturing company or something like that, they work with one person within that other company that's in a specific department, right? But that department is a piece of a much larger organization, and they have, maybe an approved vendors list or something like that. And so many times, they could be sitting in a cubicle next to somebody else that doesn't even know who your vendors are, who you use, or what other capabilities they have, because they have one problem, and the guy before them said, hey, here's the vendor that we use for this, and they go to it, but they don't know. They don't go to your website, and they're not going to go out of their way to say, what other capabilities and services does this company have? So if you don't continue to educate your customers, or the internal employee leaves that, that company, and then the next person takes over, they're going to look for a new vendor. I think that's a huge piece of continuing to, bring on new clients, but keep them engaged, keep them happy, and cross-sell, upsell opportunities, referrals, right?
Or just education. Yeah. Just educating them as to why the vendor that you work with is still the best vendor, right? And how they can sort of see other areas that they can help.
Yeah. Yeah. And you see that a lot on the B2C side, right? With basically PR teams, why do we care that, a big, food, consumer packaged good company or something like that is donating, food to hungry or homeless, or that, your bottled water company is giving away bottled water to hurricanes and those sorts of things. I mean, it's the same idea, is that they want to show that value and prove to their loyal customers that, hey, there's a reason that you stand behind us and that you buy our products, because we're a quality company. And I think that far too often we see all of these items and we don't kind of see the big picture. And so you have a client who is, like we said, in a manufacturing space or something like that, where it doesn't apply to me because all of my business comes from word of mouth and referrals. And it's like, well, yeah, that's kind of the whole point, right? Imagine if you could bring on more customers and get more referrals because you're providing a higher level of service and you're going out of your way. If you accidentally got into this place with your business that you've grown from 5 million to 10 million or 10 million to 100 million, and you haven't really implemented a cohesive marketing strategy to nurture and to engage and to attract new customers, then imagine if you did implement those, what could happen. So I think it's not so much about hey, I'm doing marketing, and you just think about you're doing a trade show, or you're doing a commercial, or we're doing some SEO, or we're doing some PPC. I think it's all of it. You have to look at it. It's not a funnel anymore, right? It's sort of it's a circle, and it needs to continue to go around.
Again, I think every company had to think about capturing the demand, creating the demand, and also nurturing the folks that they have. I mean, you could do the nurturing to just people that been to your website, right? That's another way to nurture. You haven't even captured their email address yet, but you've pixeled them. They've been to certain pages. They've shown interest on a particular product, so you can nurture them through Facebook ads, Instagram ads, whatever it might be. Or when you capture the email address, now you have more idea as to who that person is, what they came looking for, right? Their early stage of their buying process. How do you make sure that, and once they've actually became a customer, figure out how you can make sure that you're there for them for the long haul.
Right. Absolutely. So let's wrap it up here. I think there's a lot of good topics there, and again, to kind of reiterate, our plan with this podcast here, if you're interested in any of these subjects that we're kind of touching on just very briefly today, we're going to break these out and go over each of these individual buckets that we're talking about, and talk about some more specific insights into how do we accomplish this for our clients, for all different types of industries. So just like we said, within search or within capturing demand, there's so many ways that you can make that happen. So we're going to dive into the sort of nitty gritty details of how do you show up organically, or how do you optimize your search campaigns or product listing ads in the shopping campaigns. All of that is going to be done over the next couple of podcasts. So anything else you wanted to add to our audience here, Solomon?
Nope, that's it. We got a lot of great content coming up, and thank you all for listening.